back to Beyond the Struggle. My name is Jason Blackledge, and I am here with Frank Carter.
How's it going, everybody?
Welcome, sir. So, talk with some people about something that, some good topics, some good things to talk about, um, especially on a podcast that centers around recovery and treatment and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we kind of came up with, myself, Jeff, was spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Important,
Yeah.
right? In recovery.
Essential, yeah.
And man, I tell you that when that topic came up, so did your name. Isn't that weird?
Very much.
Yeah.
But also, like, what a privilege. you
Yeah.
know?
So I just wanted to kind of chat with you about it, man, about your growth, about some of your ideas. Because as someone that's been in your life for a few years now, I've seen that change. I've seen your connection change, maybe your definition change, that kind of stuff. I guess, man, first is like when you came into recovery and you heard that word, like what was your thought process?
I was turned off automatically.
Why?
I guess from childhood, and I'm different, I'm self-pity type of person. Like, I think it was probably an excuse. It was an excuse, to not want to do the stuff,
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw the word God or higher power or spirituality, I was like, oh, well, this ain't for me, because the life I lived, I'm going to the place, like God doesn't want nothing to do. I believed I was agnostic, right? I believed that there was a God. I just didn't think God wanted to mess with me.
Yeah.
I've done too much wrong, can't be saved, so that kept me away from it, and early on in recovery, I was blessed to fall in line with some people that were doing some things in this recovery process that they don't know it probably, but my higher power was them for the longest time. It was kind of like I believe that if I did what they suggested me to do or what they're doing, I have a chance to stay sober.
Yeah.
And one thing I've found when it comes to spirituality for me, the farther along that I'm here, and doing this thing, the deeper my conception of spirituality and higher power will become.
Yeah.
I always use the analogy of walking out into the ocean. The farther I walk out, the deeper the water gets, and that's for me for spirituality, man. Like, you're right. A lot has changed for me, Simply put, when I first got here, my belief systems were in this 12-step recovery program that I'm still doing, but that's what I came to believe in.
Yeah.
And I had a mentor that would tell me that if I didn't have my own conception of a higher power by the time I made 7 months sober, I was going to drink again. And like, that scared the crap out of me, So like, I was on this journey to find some type of higher power of my understanding. And throughout the years, like, that's what I held on to. I didn't know. A year and a half ago, I didn't know what I was praying to.
Yeah.
Right? I said God because it was easy to say, because I was told to do it, and some things happened in my recovery process. I want to say I was about 5.5 years sober. I was busy, my second child was just born. Life happened. Had to slow down a lot in recovery wise because I had family, career, kids I needed to be there for. And these things that held me together for these first 5 years of sobriety weren't able to be at my access anymore, and I finally really grasped what that one guy told me, and it just wasn't at 7 months.
Yeah.
It was more at 5 years, and I started doing some soul searching. Fell in line with I got a different sponsor, and we started working some steps and working some things out, and he really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and this is just my opinion, this is my experience, right? But he sat me down and he was like, so what? I had already started going to church and stuff, which that was something I was always against.
Yeah.
Probably from being raised Catholic, and I used to say I was forced to go to Catholic church and
Hmm.
stuff. And today I was probably privileged. We've said that a lot already, but like it was,
The word for the day.
oh forbid that I was forced to go to a good private school. But and he was like, so what was your conception of this higher power? And couldn't really give him an answer. And he was like, well, what were these guidelines that you live by? With this higher power, and still couldn't really give him a concrete answer. So he pretty much said something that if I would have met him a year ago, it probably would have made me angry and I probably would have left.
Hmm.
But since I was already starting this spiritual journey, he was like, so you telling me you come here um, selfish and self-centered to the core, lived a life based off a whole bunch of bad decisions, you know, and you come here and you're supposed to be able to create this thing. Imagine this higher power that's bigger than everything,
Hmm.
but you came up with it.
Yeah.
This selfish, self-centered person just thought of this higher power. He's like, that doesn't sound a little silly to you, And I was like, for me personally, yes. It has worked. And it carried me,
Yeah.
through my first 5.5
And when you
years.
say that, like, man, I guess to maybe just try to clarify is like what you're talking about there is just like a set of principles,
A set of
like
principles.
just overall
Right.
good characteristics, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like honesty,
Hmm.
courage, having integrity, like these principles were given behind these suggestions,
Hmm. And that's where spirituality started.
hmm That's where spirituality started. Because, like, I'm a firm believer, if you practice these things,
Yeah.
your life will get better.
Yeah.
It especially come from where we came from.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, just think about it. The life that you were living, if you just start being honest and having
Hmm.
integrity, like good things could probably
Yeah.
happen. You know, um, if I start, if I stop, like, hurting everybody I love and come in contact with, my anxiety will probably slip away.
Yeah.
You know.
Look, man, I got to say this. I remember you telling somebody one day um, that said they were having problems sleeping, right? And I remember you telling them, I would hope so.
Yeah,
Like you were like,
absolutely.
you just got done terrorizing everybody in your life.
Right.
I would hope that you're not sleeping good two
Yeah,
nights
because like
into being in treatment.
and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. Like, look, don't take, I'm just I'm an alcoholic who is now a counselor, a
Mhm.
substance abuse counselor. But like, in my opinion, when you come to treatment, you shouldn't be sleeping at night. Like, for me personally, my experience, I was just terrorizing the city I was from for the past 6 months, and I think that I'm just come here and I should be able to sleep
Hit the
comfortably.
pillow and fall
Like,
asleep.
they have names for that,
Yeah.
and I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
Like, I have a soul. I have a conscience. So like I should be feeling grief and guilt.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a believer that, like, once you go through it and you start believing in something, you take actions, like, you will start sleeping better at night.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to, like,
Oh
start getting a
man,
good
dude.
night's
I
sleep?
I still don't get good night sleeps, man, but I think that's just cuz I'm getting old.
You are.
No, yeah. I don't know, man. That's a good question. I always tell people, I think for myself in this whole journey, I do still recall this like 7 month mark
Hmm.
where went to treatment, got out of treatment for about 6 months, I got involved with some of the same guys that you talk about early in recovery, that were really um, practicing these principles of spirituality, because that's where mine started at also. And that's probably where mine is still today.
Mhm.
Um, you know, uh, and I can look back and I can remember that 7 month mark is when um, I feel like life really just took off.
Right.
Like it took on a new meaning. How about that? It wasn't I wasn't just doing the same old go to treatment, get out of treatment, go to
Mhm.
sober living. It felt different that time. So it was about seven
You were
months
doing the
probably.
work,
Yeah.
and that's what it was for me, man. Like that's that whole first 5 years, right? Is I was doing the work.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of it. And in this past year and a half, even though I've read it 100 times,
Mhm.
it like I realized that this whole recovery thing, is contingent on my relationship with God,
Mhm.
right? It says it, we read it all the
Yeah.
time, but like it says that's what this book for is to find power. And like I think what happened to me at right that 5.5 year mark was that like though I prayed, though I meditated, though I thought I was utilizing a higher power, my sobriety was contingent on how much action I was putting in.
Yeah.
You know, and once that action was no longer being able to be as consistent as it was because of like family and kids and stuff, that my spirituality started to slip because I wasn't able to go meet all these people. I wasn't able to attend all these meetings. So like my happiness was and my sanity was based off of those things,
Yeah.
you know. And that kind of goes back to what my mentor said early on was like if your sobriety and your recovery is based off of being able to do those things, eventually you're going to hit a point where you're not going to be able to do them.
Yeah. I think we saw a lot of that happen in COVID, man.
Absolutely.
You saw that like where the spiritual aspect of this. And again, man, I don't want to turn people off by that term. That I know those terms. I mean, look, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take your words. The
Hmm.
fact that you're sitting here saying that I was working in treatment and 5+ years sober
Hmm.
before that idea started to change for me. And so like, cause that's something that can be difficult for people to wrap their heads around.
Absolutely.
You
And
know?
I would have never been able to receive what I believe today at 6 months sober.
Yeah.
I would have been turned off. And so like I'm happy that it went the way it went, because I don't believe I would be where I'm at today if it
Yeah.
didn't. I believe everything happens for a reason and there's a purpose behind it. I just have to look for it. And um, but I will say in this past year and a half, spiritually, and that's why I say it was a privilege that you mentioned my name was brought up when you talked about faith, because I bet you if you would have talked about it 2 years ago, my name wouldn't have popped up. And I think that's cool for me because I know
Yeah.
you understand it. Like you have kids, you're busy, you have a career, you can't do what you were being able to do when you first got sober. And it's like, but my sobriety, we're not confused that our sobriety is still contingent on this relationship and like these actions that we make,
Yeah.
right?
Man, I wanted to say this one thing too. I wanted to, I don't know, fit it into somewhere when we were having this conversation today. You told me something not long ago, man. We were just having a conversation. I think both of us were on the way home from work. And you told me that when I'm living by principles, these spiritual principles we talked about, like you said, courage,
Mm-hmm.
integrity, honesty, all these different principles, right? Just being a decent human being.
Right.
And you told me, you said, man, when I live by principles, I don't have to tell people I'm living by principles.
Correct.
And so like kind of based on what we were saying in this conversation is like when I'm living a life of spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to tell people I'm living a life
Mm-hmm.
on spirituality.
because it's a crazy thing, like that's why when you brought up spirituality and faith, I was like, man, do we have enough time?
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that come into play, right? It's because I was that guy too. Like I was sponsoring all these people, but guess what? You knew that I was sponsoring all these people.
Yeah.
And like my selfishness and self-centeredness and my ego would take place like way more than the higher power part of it.
Hmm.
Um, and so lately, like my journey is giving credit to my higher power,
Hmm.
credit to the spirituality. Like that's why I want to make it a point that like I'm no longer confused. The reason me and you are able to have this conversation today is purely God.
Yeah.
Because how many times did you try this like on your own? How many times did I try it on my own? Like this is something I couldn't even imagine, and I had an old timer, tell me one time, he actually says it all the time, but he says like if I would have wrote out a list of everything that I hope to achieve through sobriety when I first got sober, I'd have sold myself short.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're saying that doing a podcast for Woodlake would not have been on that
No.
would not have been as the clinical director at Woodlake
It would
at one of the Woodlake facilities.
would it for you,
Yeah.
like times have changed.
Yeah.
That whole tradition of attraction rather than promotion has always been like forefront of my mind.
Hmm.
Like um, my actions. You said it before, and there's a back in a book. Like I try to help as many people as I can, and sometimes I use words.
Oh, it was yeah, it's hold on, now you just put me on the spot, man.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
no, I carry the message
Hmm.
and when I have to I use words.
Absolutely, and like that's from God.
Yeah.
Because it feels up to me. Like I'm telling everybody what they need to do.
Yeah.
7 years sober, claim to be spiritual.
Mm.
I can still fall short and think I have all the answers for everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
One of the things I've seen, man, in your life, as an outsider, as an admirer, let's say that, is that I've seen this spiritual side of you, this throughout your work, throughout your growth, that kind of stuff. But it's it's become it's not just about you anymore.
Mm.
It's like your family's now involved in this journey. It's not just your journey anymore. At least is what it seems.
Right.
From an outside perspective.
Absolutely. Because, like, man, that's a whole nother subject, but we are, I have two kids. You have two kids, that's something that God blessed me with. And I think it's vital to be the spiritual leader of my house.
Hmm.
I believe that was my God given role to be a spiritual leader. And you don't even have to ask my wife. My wife has been the spiritual leader for so long,
Hmm.
and um, that's something that's came a point to me is that like I wasn't fulfilling my role as the father, as a spiritual leader. So we treatment slang, recovery slang. You hear all the time that like you can't do these things for your family. You got to
Hmm.
do them for yourself, and sure that's true to an extent. But I'm also a believer that family and kids can be a great motivational factor in your recovery,
Well, for
and
anything.
that's what it is with my
Yeah.
spiritual journey. Yes, I'm reaping benefits. Yes, I'm sleeping good at night. Yes, I'm having this sense of peace that I was missing all along. But ultimately, like I'm being the best example I can for my kids. And I know you feel this way too as a father. Like it's top priority for me.
Yeah.
You know, we I messed up a lot of things in my life, and I was blessed to not have kids until I got into sobriety. And it's cool to be able to say they never had to see me drunk or high, you know. But it's even better to say that I led them to God,
Yeah.
you know. Um, I something just popped in my head. I used to think I was the most humblest person ever. When quickly realized that I was just always not in the right mindset. I was either drunk or high. That's why I thought I was humble. And
Yeah.
I thought I was humble because I was always at peace. I make a joke that the only people that could have made me mad before I got sober was my mom, because I'm a mama's boy, and my girlfriend. But really it's because the drugs and alcohol took care of everything else.
Yeah, just kind of out
You
of
know,
touch.
and it kind of goes to like that restless and irritability and like the spirituality that comes along with addiction. And it's God fulfills that now.
Hmm.
Now I could confidently say that I'm not the most humble person, but 90% of the time I have peace.
Hmm.
You know, and I think that's through a relationship with my higher power.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. I'm
Ooh,
gonna put you on the spot.
you've been putting me on the spot.
I guess you're right, but this one is, what if someone had to, if someone was sitting here and you were talking to someone new, you were talking to somebody in a treatment center right now,
Mhm.
Frank, right now, which obviously you do all the time. What is your definition of spirituality?
Mm.
That's why I said put him on the spot.
That's a big spot. My definition of spirituality is, first it comes to the principles we talked about. You know,
Just overall good
just
principles.
overall
Just be a
good
good person.
principles. Just being a good person, but also knowing that I can't do it on my own,
Hmm.
and having the idea of like, if I were able to, because I believe most of us. I don't want to give everybody credit, but most of us that we run into and get to work with on a daily basis are decent people.
Hmm.
We've done a lot of bad and dumb
Oh,
things.
you're talking about clients? Oh
Clients,
yeah,
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 we've
yeah.
done
Good. They're
yeah,
not bad people trying to be good people.
right.
Yeah,
So like we've done a lot of bad stuff,
yeah,
and it comes to it like I wasn't confused that I was a dishonest, selfish person.
hmm,
And I can't sit here and say that I never wanted to be honest and selfless and have integrity and all these things. But I'm confident saying if I had the power to live by those principles, I'd have done it a long time
yeah,
ago. So I think spirituality to me is, yes, living by those principles, but not being confused that I can't do them on my own.
yeah,
You know, um, that I need God to lead me
yeah.
to those principles.
Yeah, I think that's you talk about it. I ask people that all the time. Like, if the ability to do this by myself was there, why didn't I do it already?
Right.
You know?
Like I used to be that person.
Yeah.
I know about my addiction. Y'all have taught me a lot. So I just need to get out. I need to go to work. I need to get a job. I need to be honest with people. I just don't need to get high anymore.
Yeah.
And
If I
it's
had a
like,
penny for every time
right,
I've either heard or said that. Yeah.
dude, because like I'd have done it a long time ago.
Mhm.
Because once again, I have a heart. I've never lost my heart. I was always a mama's boy, and I loved my mom. My wife would get angry about how much I will do for my mom.
Yeah.
You know, um, but at the same time, she was the one I hurt the most
Yeah.
through my addiction. She was the one that got everything. So like, if I had the power to not do those things, I'd have done it.
Yeah.
Like for an example, I know we're running out of time, but like I remember the last day I got high. I'll never forget it. I remember driving to meet the guy to get the drugs, crying because I didn't want to go do it.
Yeah.
But also did not have the power to turn
Yeah.
around.
Did also not want to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
I need God to help me live this way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Need that. I mean, and as like you said, man, this spirituality, this factor, it's a difficult, I think it can be a difficult, but also can be very easy. Like if
Hmm.
we tend to overthink things, make things more difficult. I love what you said, man. It's like these principles, and I can't do it by myself,
Right.
right? And it can be as simple as that.
And I believe what kept me away for so long is prejudice, man. Like I had all these old beliefs of these things, and the reason why I just not gonna mess with that because they do this and they do that, and And like that kept me away for the longest
Yeah.
time, and like I think that's a problem with a lot of people when they get sober is they have these old ideas and these old prejudice, and it robbed me. I'm grateful for my first 5 years of sobriety, but it robbed me, I believe, from having a better spiritual relationship.
Well, man, thank you. Thanks for sharing your experience and with with this spirituality, with this journey, man. Honored.
Honored to be here, man. Like once again, when you and Jeff brought up, like, hey, we think we want to get you on and we want to talk about faith, and your name came up, like I just spoke about giving God all the credit,
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it did make me want to give a pat on my back, like
Yeah.
that's cool, man.
Yeah,
That's
it
an
is.
honor too. Like it's one thing to be asked about speaking on sobriety, or work ethic or all these things, but like being asked to speak about God and spirituality is probably the coolest thing
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Beyond the Struggle. We'll see you guys again.